guys, Shane here. Welcome to this painting tutorial. So we're going to be taking a look at painting a modern EOD or Explosive Ordnance Disposal Expert. This kit is a 135 figure from Meng Models. So first things first, I've already pre-painted the face, and I'll have a link to that in the video description on how I paint faces. And I'm just going to use a bit of poster tack or blue tack just to seal off his face to protect it from the airbrushing. So the model's been primed with grey surface primer, and I'm going to start laying the first layers of colour for his uniform, and we're going to be using Model Air Camo Green. I'm going to start applying this with a relatively high PSI. I think my airbrush compressor is set about 25 PSI here. I find Model Air sprays pretty well with high pressures, just a small amount of paint and you should be fine. So this will take about 2 or 3 coats, as this colour is slightly transparent, so it took about 2 to 3 coats to build up a solid layer. You can also brush paint Model Air colours too, even though they are designed for paint for an airbrush, but they're pre-tinned, so they're actually really good for paintbrushing for that reason, as they do not require any more tinning. With the green laid, now I'm going to start adding the base for the black parts of his uniform, which is, I believe, like the Cavalier plates. And for that we're using Vallejo Panzerace's German Uniform Black, which is the base colour. Alternatively, you can also use German Grey here too if you wish. On second thoughts, it might be in a better colour. So I'm going to start applying this. I've slightly tinned out just a little bit of water, just literally the tip of a brush dipped in water and just mixed into the paint is the best way to do it. You get a very good control without watering it down too much. The camera struggles to kind of get its light balance here when I paint darker colour, so my apologies for that. And I'm just going to slowly start edging in these details. The box art is actually a very good colour instruction, as I'm not really used to painting modern subjects, so I was referring to the box art to figure out what parts were meant to be in this black colour. I was doing in his knee pads, as well as the heavy like rubber straps that attach his ankles. I think this must be for like a shin guard or a greave or some such. And after a few coats, this is what we're left with. I'm also going to take the same colour and I'm going to paint in his visor. You'll also notice I've also painted in the interior of the helmet like a black grey as well, and I did that before I painted the face, just to represent the padding that's inside the helmet. And I'm going to be quite careful not to get this darker colour either on the skin or on the green areas we painted in. I'm also going to use the same colour to paint in this small area on the back of his helmet. I believe it's some type of vent or maybe cooling system, I'm not entirely sure. I'm also going to take some actual German grey here, or Panzer grey should I say, and I'm actually going to paint in the small wrist computer or keyboard he has on his arm, just to give it a slightly different texture. Once everything's been allowed to dry for about 12 or 24 hours, I'm going to add some shades to the model, and you guessed it, I'm going to use Citadel's Agras Earthshade, which is my go-to for doing figures. So I'm going to apply this really just to the green areas. I'm going to do a different colour wash for the areas we painted in the base colour for black. So I'm going to apply this pretty heavy. I want to make this look kind of grimy, because this is a working suit after all, and you know, these troops are often used extensively in Afghanistan and Iraq during the various wars for the diffusing of EODs and the like. So it is going to get grimy. It is quite a practical and utilitarian suit, so it's not going to be in pristine condition, especially after a tour of duty. So I'm going to apply it pretty heavy, but I'm going to be careful to make sure that I don't let it pool in any area. So I'm just going to keep spreading it around. Anytime I see a large pool of wash maybe collecting at his feet, which is the natural place you're going to get it due to gravity. I just clean off my brush and use my brush as a sponge and just basically work that wash in and blend it out. It's very simple. It just takes a few minutes and a little bit of observantness and you'll be fine. I just want to apply it to the green parts of his helmet. Be careful not to get it on his face, and if you do, you can just wipe it off. But just keep an eye on what you're doing with your brush. And then for the shade the black areas, we're going to add some null oil, which is like a greasy wash. Now this is going to have a bit of an unforeseen effect on the German uniform black colour. It's going to make it turn very glossy. However, not to worry, if you use the Panzer Grey instead, you won't have this problem. And we're going to use a matte varnish later on to knock that back. So then we're going to start adding our highlights, and we're going back to our Vallejo Model Air Camo Green. And this is directly out of the bottle, and I've just switched down to a zero brush, which is a rigger brush by its long bristle. It's very handy using these type of brushes because it gives us a lot of control, and we can get into some of the more hidden parts of the model, if you will. And I'm just going to start working this onto tops of creases, any area where the material is pulled taut, that basically there's no shadow forming or no folds to create shadow, and I'm going to paint that a colour in there. I'm going to leave the wash really just in the recesses as always, and it just helps break up the model and create visual interest as well as give a sense of 3D effect. So I'm slowly working up the colour. As it is an already tinned colour, it does have a transparent like quality, so it does take a couple of layers to get a solid coat, which is no bad thing in brush painting. It means that we can really control the intensity of a highlight and the shade of any colour we lay when it's tinned like this. However, you must resist the urge to put a lot of paint onto your brush. You will actually see me from time to time dip my thumb as I did there, or my brush onto my thumb to absorb any of the excess paint. Since this is an acrylic, it's a non-toxic, or at least this particular acrylic isn't. Always look at the label on the Vallejo bottles to see which ones are toxic and which ones aren't. Certain pigments do have stuff that can be kind of harmful to us, but I believe this one doesn't. I just dip my thumb or my brush onto my thumb, takes away the excess, because it does have, because it is watered down to begin with, if you have too much on your brush it kind of goes everywhere, and we want to avoid this. So just a small amount of paint on your brush and allow yourself the time to build up the colour rather than try to do it in one go. It won't work if you try to rush this, so it's best just to take your time. But this is a very easy and beginner friendly model. It's great to practice highlighting skills on, and that's kind of the way I'm doing this episode, just to make it very easy for someone who's just starting off. So I would recommend these figures for beginners. And just painting in his shoulder pockets. I did make a mistake. Later on I did find out that the Velcro flap of his shoulder pocket's actually like a black or a grey. However, I painted it in green there, so just be aware of that. I can always go back later on and paint that in after the fact. I didn't realise it until after I had painted and weathered them, so I kind of didn't want to go back and paint over it. But I still may in the future, of course. I'm not going to go too crazy highlighting this. I'm actually just going to stick it to the base colour. What I found with these suits, looking at, and I've seen them in real life too, when I was on the barracks, you'd see a lot of the EOD guys showing off their equipment and doing demonstrations. The suits themselves are not particularly vibrant. They're quite pastel in their look. So I don't really want to make it a really overly highlighted thing, because I believe it'll look a little bit too off. So I'm just going to keep it basic. We are going to highlight it in a different way and weather it at the same time to make it interesting. Now we're moving on to the highlighting of the black areas. I know this is often a thing that people struggle with. So I've taken some flat blue, small amount, mixed it into our base colour, and also a tiny amount of dark grey blue and just mixed it all a little bit together. Blue is your friend. Take just a normal bit of blue, just normal blue, not bright or dark blue, just blue. Mix it in and you have a natural highlight colour. And don't mix white into like black to make highlights. You'll turn grey. So all I've done here is just mix a bit of blue into the German uniform and a little bit of dark grey blue from Vallejo model colour. I can't think of the number off the top of my head. And I just mixed them tiny amounts. The predominant colour is always going to be the base colour that we use to base the black area. So in this case it's the German tanker black from Vallejo Panzer Aces. And I'm really just going to make a very subtle highlight, and I'm just going to touch to the tops of creases and areas I just want to make them pop out and add a bit of interest to. I don't want to over highlight this. When it comes to doing black, less is more. And this is a very simplistic way of doing it. You can literally put dozens of layers into painting black. This is just going to be a very simple highlight. Doing these fingers. And this dark grey blue type of colour we've made is a very simple and quite natural highlight, or at least in scale world a natural highlight for black. And the fact that you can't really see it is a good thing. If you see big dirty highlights when someone paints a dark colour, then they've over highlighted it and they've undone their work. So very subtle. And if you're not sure, just add small amounts of the lighter, like the blue, into your darker colour first and work it up that way. I'm also going to take our little mixture here and I'm going to edge highlight his visor just to make that pop and make that stand out. Now I'm going to start painting in, once that colour has been allowed to dry, I'm going to start painting in the dials and the buttons on his wrist keyboard. And I'm just going to use some light grey, like an off-white, and some reds and blues. Nothing too crazy. Again, it's referred to the model box for reference, because that's what I did. And there you go. Just a very fine tip brush and some well tin paint. So I'm going to attach the helmet. And also using a little bit of PVA glue, I'm going to attach the clear plastic visor for his helmet. On looking back, I really should have put this in at the end. I just didn't think of it at the time, but there's a way around it, because I had to matte coat this model and I had to be very careful when I was spraying that. So now to weather the model and also add some highlight, we're going to use Tamiya's Model Weathering Master Set A, or should I say Weathering Master Set A, and I'm going to use their light dust and use the sponge applicator. And I'm just going to basically apply it to the entire model. And the nice thing about these type of pigments is you can wipe them off. So anytime I get too much, especially on the darker areas, I wipe it off with my finger to only leave a little bit of it left. And you can also see it adds another element of visual interest, as well as a kind of a natural worn highlight. After all, these guys were meant to be in the Middle East. Again, you can use them anywhere. You know, most militaries have them, and you can use them for like civilian dioramas too, of course. But I'm kind of going for like a Hurt Locker style chaps. I'm just going to make them look quite dusty and quite worn, and this type of product really allows to do that without it being too difficult or time consuming. I'm just going to apply a little bit there to his visor and wipe it away, and to the top of his helmet. And there we have a very basic weathering and highlighting layer all done in one go. It's cheating, but it looks pretty good. I'm almost quite happy with the result I get out of this. So now it's important to seal our model, so I'm going to use some Vallejo matte varnish, also to protect our pigment and also to knock back that glossy finish that the black details got once I apply the wash. And also being quite careful not to get it on his visor, because I don't want to frost the visor with matte varnish. And with that, our figure is done. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. It's been something a little bit different, and stay tuned for more painting topics, including more modern subjects to come in the future. You've been Shane, thank you so much, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye bye.